I've made a few Linux related videos over the past few weeks, and with that came a lot of questions. What Linux distro should I use? And as you can see right here, there are a handful of different Linux distros. Keeps on going. So in this video, we're going to discuss that. And in this video, my goal is to try to clear things up for y'all, not confuse any of y'all. Two things I need to address right off the get in order to do that. One, if you see, you may be able to tell I'm using Windows right now. The reason being is because Adobe CC just doesn't work right on Linux, and I can't get it to work right on Linux, regardless of how hard I try. Therefore, I record and edit everything on Windows, which I don't like. Mac OS, I do like. And two, if you've heard me talk about this at all in the past, you've obviously heard me say I use Arch, by the way. That is Arch Linux. And if you are watching this video because you're trying to figure out what Linux distro is best for you, then you probably shouldn't use Arch Linux, because that's more of an advanced tier. That would be throwing you into the deep end, not knowing how to swim. For a quick and easy answer for anyone watching this that literally they just want to answer and don't really care that much, they just want something to get away from Windows or Mac OS, then Ubuntu. I know they're going to be, oh, well, you should try this, you should try that, you should try that. But if you don't really care, then Ubuntu is a solid choice. A lot of different distros are built on Ubuntu, but also keep in mind that Ubuntu is actually built on Debian. Let me refer back to this timeline that I showed you. Okay, so you can see from 1992 all the way to 2021, which is this year. These are all different Linux distros. I know they're very small, that's not important, but this is one right here, this is one right here, this is one right here, and all of these are based on Slackware Linux, and they're all just derivatives of that. You come down, you have Debian, and all of these are just derivatives of Debian, one of the derivatives being Ubuntu, and then you can see all of these different derivatives of Ubuntu, like Pop OS, Elementary OS, a lot, Linux Mint down here, a lot that you have probably heard of that are pretty good. Then of course you have Red Hat. I'm sure you've heard of that. Again, if you can't read this, sorry, but that's okay. And then all the way down here, this is Arch Linux and all the different derivatives of Arch Linux, one of which being Manjaro. So let's talk about this for a second. And a quick disclaimer, I am by no means a GNU Linux expert, especially for all you experts that are going to come out and say GNU Linux. And this is also not going to be a full-on history lesson, although I do love history. So if you want me to make a video on the history of GNU Linux and all that, let me know. But let's talk about Linux. You have different levels of Linux. Obviously, as laid out here, you have all these different distributions, or in short, distros, but you have different levels in terms of your proficiency. So, like I said before, if you have something like Arch Linux or even Gentoo, that is something basically, if you see me install or anyone install Arch Linux, it comes out effectively as a kernel, as a terminal window. That's basically it. I don't want to get into the semantics, but it's just a black screen with text. You can go through all your files and stuff like that, but there's no graphic interface, nothing like that. You have to install everything that you want from a Windows manager or a desktop environment altogether. And if you do the Windows manager, then you have to make sure that you install the file manager and every little thing that builds up upon a particular operating system. And you have to add everything yourself. This allows it to be very customizable, but not very plug and play. On the other hand, you have something that is very beginner friendly, like Ubuntu or Linux Mint or Pop OS or Elementary OS, or a lot of those types of distros. I'm going to focus on Ubuntu real quick, where when you install it, it is a lot easier to install than something like Arch, which in all honesty, Arch really isn't that difficult to install. You just got to watch a few videos, test it out in the VM a couple times, and then you'll get it. It's really not that difficult. It's just a little bit of a learning process. But Ubuntu is literally plug and play. You plug it in, you install it, and now you're ready to play. Everything is already ready, just like you would install Windows, and that's the whole idea. You install Windows, you're ready to go. You install Mac OS, you're ready to go. You install Ubuntu or some of these other operating systems, you're ready to go. But the biggest reason why I recommended Ubuntu is because Ubuntu is one of the most popular Linux distros there are. This is what I use as a professional software developer. You may have seen that video on my channel. I kind of take you through the entire setup process actually on that video, as well as just kind of how I have my development environment set up, or had it set up rather. I don't want to blow this up a bit, but this right here is what Ubuntu looks like. You ever see these colors? That is going to be Ubuntu, or someone trying to be Ubuntu. As you can kind of see right here, you have the dock on the left, you have any applications that you need, and literally you go through here and Ubuntu describes itself as any other operating system. Oh, it's complete with all these apps straight out the box. Cool. You have Office software. Cool. You can do web browsing. You can do emailing. You can do photos. You can do edit and illustration. You can organize your photos. You have videos. You have gaming even. It's not trying to be anything special. It's just trying to be a Linux distribution that anyone can use. Coming from Windows, you can use it. Coming from macOS, you can use it. So if you don't care to dive into the rabbit hole that is Linux, but you want to use Linux, just use Ubuntu. I know there's going to be other opinions, and there are plenty of other distros that will work just well for you, but this is my recommendation. Another solid choice for beginners is Manjaro. Manjaro is Arch Linux based, but is an Arch based distribution that is plug and play. Kind of hesitated there, just because it may not be as convenient or even as stable as Ubuntu, but if you want that granular customization, Manjaro is definitely a good option. Now, another big thing about Manjaro is, of course, it is Arch based, but that also comes with the fact that you have access to the AUR, which is Arch User Repository. And by definition, by the Arch User Repository in the Arch Wiki, which that's also another positive, the Arch Wiki is really solid. The AUR was created to organize and share new packages from the community and to help expedite popular packages inclusion into the community repository, which also comes with a warning. AUR packages are user-produced content. So I can build something, put it on here. If it's good, I mean, it's open source, so you can kind of work with it, fork it, pull requests, whatever you want. But also keep in mind that these are completely unofficial and have not been thoroughly vetted. Any use of provided files is at your own risk. Now, if you get something that is reputable, it has a lot of stars, it is popular among Arch, well, then you're not going to have a problem. You're really not. It may be less stable, again, but you're not going to have that problem. And when I say stability, Manjaro is stable. It's just, I feel like Ubuntu, I feel like it's just on a slightly different level. But look at how Manjaro is compared to Arch. Whereas Arch, it comes out as a fresh, like, terminal window. Effectively, you have no desktop environment or window manager or file manager or anything. Manjaro, on the other hand, is pre-built. Again, it is plug and play, where you have Arch Linux, and any update, it goes to Manjaro, which could be unstable, but Manjaro does their testing and then they push it to Manjaro users as an update, making sure everything is good. And they also have fast tracking security updates as well. So there's just these extra added layers of stability and testing to make sure what you get as a Manjaro user is solid. Now, in my personal opinion, those are two of the most solid distributions that you can choose if you want that, you know, kind of like a full Linux experience. However, if you want to just really just put your toes in the water, you don't want it to be too difficult, you want the transition to be as easy as possible, and you're coming from Windows, there are three that I would recommend. One is Kubuntu, which is not a separate distribution from Ubuntu, rather a flavor of Ubuntu, as you can see right here under Ubuntu flavors. Kubuntu, a very solid Windows-like experience. Another one would be Linux Mint. This comes in a few different flavors of its own, whereas the closest to Windows, and I think it's primarily like Windows Vista, for some reason, would be Cinnamon. That's the flavor of Linux Mint. That would be a solid choice. Or Zorin OS, which I actually have yet to try it. I don't know if this is new or not, but I just discovered it recently. It looks like a very solid alternative to Windows, but you can also make it a solid alternative to Mac OS. You can choose the different themes or flavors, if you will. And actually, you can see that right here. For example, well, one, you can install it on a tablet and it'll be pretty solid. Two, what does that look like? That looks like Windows to me. I don't know about you. And what does that look like? It definitely resembles Mac OS to me. I don't know about you. But this is probably something that I'll be testing out probably sometime this year if I ever get around to it. I just wanted to point that out for those of you who don't really care. You just want to get away from Windows, but you really want it to be similar to Windows or similar to Mac OS. Those are definitely my recommendations. If you have your own recommendation, leave it down in the comment section and say why. Don't just type it, because that literally does nothing for us. Just tell us why you think that this distribution is good, whether it's agreeing with some of my examples or it's something way off the cuff. In all honesty, many of what I listed, except for maybe Zorin OS, still not sure about Zorin OS, although they do have a really nice website. Anyway, unsure about them. All the other ones are very solid. They're not like a one-off type. You don't know how much support there is, or there's not that much community around them to really help you out if you run into an issue. But as you can see, there are plenty of different reasons to choose plenty of different Linux distros, and based on what you want to do, how much customization you want to do, how much plug and play you want to have, all of that will determine what Linux distro is best for you. But at the end of the day, it is all built upon GNU Linux. This was a weird video to make because it's a very opinion-based subject matter, but hopefully I was able to steer you in the right direction in order to allow you to do the research yourself to kind of give you an understanding on what is different from some of these different distributions. If you appreciated the video, please leave a like. If you want to see more videos like this, or you want me to make that history on GNU Linux video, well, first let me know that down in the comments, because I'm not going to know. Also subscribe so you don't miss out on that video. And I think that's all I have to say on the matter.